on February 24th, and this is the Finance Committee for the City of Stoughton, and I'll call us to order. Everybody is here, so we have a quorum, and I'll certify that we're in compliance with open meetings law. Public comments. That'll come later in a different meeting. Communications and presentations. Director Trebotowski.
Okay, we have a few things in the packet. Mayor, if you wouldn't mind scrolling to the first document, just outlines the unspent bond proceeds as of December 31st, 2025. In total, we're looking at about 4.7, kind of have the breakout by fund. So like TID 8 is Wagon Works Way. Stormwater, there's some street projects. Note that 2023A, those are some funds that we would use to downsize the 2026 debt issue. So that's about $450,000. The ARPA money is actually going to transfer to 410, and we'll use that to downsize the debt issue. 400 construction fund, there's not much left. And 410 capital outlay, majority is Mant Park. There's some trail underpass, there's fire engine, some miscellaneous projects. But there will, it's projected that we will have some unspent bond proceeds of almost $850,000. We're going to confirm this as everything shakes up after year end. But again, any of that we'll use to downsize the 2026 debt issue and use up some of these unspent bond proceeds. Any questions on that? Okay, the next page is the preliminary fund balance recap. So just the top section is the general fund by classification. We have some non-spendable, some restricted, some assigned, noting that any changes in the current year and what the ending balance is on the far right. Noting that we will see an increase in our unassigned, unassigned fund balance, which if you go to the middle section, it will go up from 24.2% to about 33%. So we did see an increase. That's good. We want to maintain, in my opinion, above that top requirement. And if we go any higher, we can discuss any use of that fund balance. We'll see how things shake out. That bottom section looks at the TID specifically. We did see a decrease from the beginning balance of the end of 2024 to 2025. A few notes, TID 8, there is unspent bond proceeds in that. So truly, while there is a positive cash and investments, there is a slight, like 35,000 negative true, like unassigned, or a portion that's not unspent bond proceeds. I do have another note down there about with the closure of TID 4, about 650,000 will go to TID 5. So that'll help clear up some of that deficit there. And again, TID 7 donated 500,000 this year to TID 8, and we'll see those donations continue in the future. Are there any questions on this sheet? Okay. So the next one is just the 2027 budget dates. We will share this with council. It isn't on tonight's council agenda with maybe a late night, so we'll forward that on. But once April comes around and we have all the committees settled, we'll make sure that everyone knows what the CIP committee dates are and get that on their calendar. Any questions on that? Okay, the next item, we received notification that there are some estate funds that will be coming our way. They are specifically for the K9 and the EMS. I'm meeting with Thrivent next week to discuss, there's life insurance portion and investment portion. With the investment, there's some accounts set up that we'll have to do, so that'll be coming to you as I have to notify you of any accounts that are set up. But once that's set up, we'll withdraw that money and close that up. So just note that K9, they're looking at about 24,350 estimated, and EMS 28,350. So more on that when we have final numbers and accounts set up.
And that wasn't
No, I didn't have any written documentation on it.
All right, any questions on any of that? Okay, thank you. Next item is approval of the minutes from 2:10.
Move to approve.
All right.
Second.
Motion by Doom, second by Reeves. Any questions, comments, edits? Hearing none. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? And I'll abstain since I wasn't at the meeting. Next item is back to Director Trevitowski. We have reports.
I don't have any specific notes on this. We got some of kind of where some fund balance ended up, and then we do have a resolution on the meeting here to discuss deficits and budget amendments for that. So I don't have any specific comments on any of the reports, but happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Any questions? All right, hearing none, we'll move on to the first resolution that we have here, and I think it's the only resolution that we have. This is Resolution 25 of 2026 to amend the 2025 adopted budget for departmental deficits and expenditures exceeding budgetary authority.
Okay. So we're looking at about almost 3 million of budget amendments for increasing expenditures. There's a report following the resolution that off to the right under the budget amendment entry, you can see what the budget amendment entry amounts are. What that takes into consideration is the expenditures exceeding budget. We do show the deficits for each department in the general fund, the TID districts below that, special revenue funds, debt service, capital outlay, and then the business type funds. So there was a surplus overall, but then some deficits that needed to be covered. So with that net effect, there was still the positive addition to the fund balance that we did see on that first report. The TIDs, the TID 8, you see a large surplus of over $1 million. Again, that's unspent bond proceeds. Happy to answer any questions. Otherwise, it shows the deficits, surpluses, and then what budget amendments are.
Lisa?
Just one, and I actually was talking with the Opera House Director, Bill, the other day, and then we got interrupted, and so he didn't get a chance to finish. So I was wondering about the Opera House. Is part of that because of the way that their year falls compared to ours, or were there other factors in there?
One part was an election change in an employee's health insurance.
Okay.
That was a big chunk, and there's others. I would have to bring up all the
Okay.
details, but I remember that being one thing, what was budgeted for, and then they had a change in election that wasn't budgeted for, so that's part of that.
And, yeah, and he did mention the health insurance piece, and so, so it's probably maybe less about the whole different fiscal year then, as far as you recall?
I would have to pull up
That's okay.
exactly, but
It's not
Can you
that
put
big a
on
deal.
that?
I was more curious. Thank you.
Brett?
Were any of the deficits within the departments, were any of them, something to be concerned about, or more so, just, this happened or that happened, or are there any things that we could do to adjust budgeting in the departments in order to not see, or at least to fund them fully?
So one of the big items was the allocation. If you'll see, Public Works, Park and Rec had a big surplus, but then the streets had a big deficit. Those together is a surplus, and it's really the way we had budgeted allocation-wise of wages versus what actually happened. So we're chewing some things up and through payroll, doing automatic allocations that way as well to help clear that up. Buildings, there was just a lot of things that happened throughout 2025 that, you can't necessarily expect to and budget for. Like IT, it was Microsoft, the whole Google Microsoft conversion. Mayor, it was just some membership dues. Senior center, there was foundation grant expenses that were higher. Let's see, I think that's about it for those.
But
Nothing glaring, no,
make adjustments for.
correct. I mean, obviously with the Opera House health insurance change, now that we know about it, we budget appropriately, but those things happen throughout the year.
So on this amendment, it says the fiscal impact is expenditures and revenue increase of, about 1.3 million. Looking at the budget spreadsheet, can you help me, forgive my ignorance, but it looks like, I was trying to make sense of it this afternoon at lunch and I couldn't. What's the net, impact to the city's bottom
For
line?
the general fund?
Yeah.
Or for general fund, it was a positive. The, the $296,014 was a positive surplus for the general fund.
So, yeah, I guess, looking at the sheet, I'm used to having column numbers, but where it says surplus, I see the about 4 million, and then there's a deficit column, and then there's those additional expenditures.
Right, so you have a
Trying to
surplus
reconcile
less
that.
the deficit.
Mhm.
Let me quick. You have the 494, 824, deficit 198, 810. That minus that is the 296,14, $296,014. So if you have what we had for surplus,
Mhm.
less the deficits, is that increase in fund balance of 296,14.
Okay.
And then we have the fund balance policy then, so we're still in good shape there.
Yep, we went over that in the fund balance. We're at about 33% projected. So last year it was at 24.2%. So we're within it or over it. And a good cushion is good to have.
Any other questions? Okay, so I think we need to have a recommendation to move it to council. All right, recommendation by Schumacher,
Second.
second by Reeves. All right, all in favor to recommend to council, please say aye.
Aye.
And any opposed? All right, we'll recommend to council. And the last item. I don't know who's.
Okay. Yeah, so we have an ordinance for the, that would amend the code to allow for the mayor to execute any sort of cost reimbursement agreements with potential developers. So I think at the last meeting, we made an adjustment to, or 2 meetings ago, adjustment to the TIF policy that allowed the mayor to do that when we get a TIF application. So this is similar, except it would apply for people that are applying for like significant zoning projects, or if they're submitting plats or condominium plats. That would this ordinance would just allow the mayor to sign a cost reimbursement agreement before planning staff begin evaluating it and we start negotiating any sort of like public improvements or having engineers look at things. So it's just another way to try to expedite things. Had a conversation with Lisa, our finance director Lisa, about on the second section here, it says if the city costs will exceed $1,000, a cost reimbursement agreement will be required. So basically when we do a cost reimbursement agreement, one of the major things we're looking for is a deposit from the person to cover our costs. So that's the main reason we would do that, is just extra security, because the ordinance already requires them to pay the city's out-of-pocket costs. One issue is if it's $1,000 and we've got a lot of projects that are, you know, on the $1,000 side, that's just a lot of admin work for creating deposit accounts or separate accounts for that. So one or a couple ways to handle that might be we could either up that to like $5,000 or $10,000, or rather than a mandatory cost reimbursement, say that the city may require a cost reimbursement if the costs exceed $1,000. That way, if we've got developers we've worked with a lot, we don't really have the same concerns about getting funds reimbursed. Maybe we don't need a cost reimbursement unless it goes above a certain threshold. But it would basically give city staff or the mayor discretion to decide when that agreement is necessary and authorize them to sign. Again, this is just sort of policy questions on whether or not you want to authorize the mayor to sign these and sort of skip that formal cost reimbursement agreement step of them coming to the city council or finance committee for approval. So similar to the TIF policy, like I said before.
Brett?
I mean, I'm always for being more expeditious in these types of things. You know, we certainly want, we don't want to eat costs of developments that are, you know, we're not out there soliciting them, so we should definitely have these costs. I'm a little bit on the fence as far as the two options you explained in there, as far as like leaving the language as may require a cost reimbursement agreement or having a definitive level in there. I mean, I hate when we have squishy language in there and then it gets to be subjective down the road. But I also don't like to have arbitrary limits in there.
Yeah, so I think typically, like for deposits, we've required 10 or 15,000 is the standard. It's like with plats, that's an automatic cost reimbursement because that eats up engineering costs really quickly. For the rezones, you know, it could be a simple rezone, or if somebody's asking for like a PUD, or there are just some engineering questions that are tricky for the site, like those costs can add up quickly. So, I mean, $1,000, that goes by. Yeah.
That can get eaten up in like 6 hours of conversation
Mhm.
with engineers. So, Lisa, what would be kind of your break point on for what the administrative work would be to set up these accounts versus what level we could set a dollar value at? What would be your kind of break point on it?
I guess I would want to see something more 5,000 at the very low end. I can't see us every project having to collect $1,000. And for some of these people, it's a deposit that sits there, and then they're paying the expenses on top of that. So depending what kind of project it is, like is that, I mean, it's only $1,000, but it is $1,000 that we're sitting on while they're still paying other bills. So it's not like we use that money up and they replenish it, we sit on that.
We want smaller projects to get rolling too, and that could be like prohibitive if they might not, you know, then we're putting a payroll on so. Yeah, I mean, it would be, 5,000 would be.
I like the 5,000 because oftentimes what happens, it starts out pretty innocently, And then next thing you know, we're up to 5,000 before we know it, and then they're like, oh, well, I didn't realize I was gonna have to pay. And I don't wanna get into that situation again. We get creep on it,
Yeah.
you know? So
That's
I think
reasonable.
5,000 is reasonable, and we can tell them up front, you know, this is how it's gonna be, and, you know, and it's gonna figure out whether or not they're serious or not right
Yeah.
off the get-go, because sometimes we get strung along and, you know, we got one that's probably over 5,000 right now.
Yeah, it's kind of hard to gauge because we could have the exact same development come in, right? And one could have a stellar project manager and they could just get it done and the review back and forth is so minimal versus like if you have somebody that doesn't really know what they're doing, then what tends to happen is we, and by default, our engineers become the project managers, and then there's a lot of back and forth, and those costs just go like this, because we have to bill back for that time that Strand is using to review those projects. So it's really hard to gauge, but I think that we need something in place to ensure that we're gonna get, I think that's what's concerning, is that we don't want the, taxpayers necessarily paying for bad project management. I don't know how else to say that kindly, but
I would rather have a semi-arbitrary limit rather than squishy language.
Yeah, I think a hard cap makes sense. That way, uniform application. You don't have people arguing over unfair treatment, so. And I wouldn't have any issue with 5,000.
Maybe in 10 or 15 years, we have to revisit that
Mhm.
dollar amount if costs rise further.
And to clarify, so this is if expenses are estimated to go beyond 5,000?
Correct.
And
Well,
you don't wanna,
and it wouldn't be like STI necessarily, because we'd have a developer
Right,
agreement or
but
like
for
one of
the
those.
projects
Yeah.
that wouldn't fall
Yeah.
under that.
Yep.
would you feel a need to build in an escalator, or do you think just a flat 5,000?
I
is
think a
decent?
flat and revisit as needed.
Okay.
So then am I hearing, so would we have to change the language in section 2 then from 1,000 to 5,000 then?
Yeah, so there are a couple ways we could do it. You could recommend approval with that amendment, or if you wanted to, you could postpone. We could make the change, bring back a clean ordinance, or, for consideration.
And then from a procedural standpoint, if we recommend approval with the amendment, does it have to go back to plan then, because they approved it?
No,
Okay.
no.
Any other questions?
Or in the ordinance council with the amendment to 5,000,
All right, we have,
adjustment to 5,000, not the amendment.
all right, we have motion by Schumacher
Second.
and second by Doom. All right, all in favor, please say aye.
All right.
Aye.
Aye. And any opposed? All right. Then this goes to council, correct? All right, but not tonight. Right, or is it tonight?
I think it's on the
Is it on
agenda,
tonight?
but it's a
Okay.
first reading, so.
It's a first reading,
Yep.
okay. Okay, and then we have the senior center town agreements. Who is speaking to that? It's-
Red to go.
Ready to go.
Okay. Hi, I'm Cindy from the Senior Center. Just in case, you never know. So we have been talking about township contributions for many years. Historically, each of the, 4 townships that surround Stoughton make a decision on what they want to contribute to the senior center. So historically, again, depending on who sits on their board, how supportive they are, the amounts have fluctuated throughout time. Probably about 15 years ago, we tried to suggest to the townships, depending on our usage, which works out to be about 20 to 25% of township usage of the senior center, that if you broke that down, would that give the townships a better indication of maybe what they should be contributing? Really Dunn Township has really only been the one that has taken that seriously and historically have made decent contributions. It is always a struggle. I invite myself to their budget discussions. They're not always open to those discussions. They usually make their own decisions. For senior center usage, we have a check-in system that tells us who's using the senior center, where they live, and what they're, what activities they're participating in. This has been for well over 10 years that we have this information. We have changed systems throughout that time, but it's basically the same. It's a barcode that people have. They check in when they get there. They tell you what they're doing, and they go about their business. So Lisa and I have put together some historical usage. For as long as I've been at the senior center, we give the township a mid-year report and an end-of-the-year report. The usage of the senior center by the townships, so they have information on what that is. So we put together the historical usage here that you see. By this list 5 townships: Albion, Dunkirk, Pleasant Springs, Rutland, and Dunn. Historically, Albion has not contributed much at all. The other piece that gets a little bit muddy is that Dane County provides funding for the Stoughton Senior Center to provide case management services for Dunkirk and Albion. Dunkirk and Albion make a contribution to the senior center for those case management services, which have nothing to do with what we're talking about today. Those are completely separate. The city of Stoughton pays nothing towards the case management services in Dunkirk and Albion. Some in-kind, we provide an office, but that person's, they work 15 hours a week. That person's, all of their salary is paid by the contribution that comes from Dane County and those 2 townships. So the city of Stoughton doesn't pay anything for that. So what we're discussing is usage, just general operational usage of the senior center. So the historical usage that's first here is from 2021 to 2025. It fluctuates a bit, but not a whole lot. And then the next, do you want to talk about the budget amounts?
Sure. So this represents the 2026 budget amounts. So what we're talking about allocating part to the towns is the general operating budget and certain personnel costs. As Cindy indicated, some staff would not be factored into here. There's a foundation and grant expense in the operating that we did not include in here as well. We're not asking for any contribution towards any capital items, so strictly operational and personnel costs. So this outlines 2026 budget where we're looking at just over $400,000. So we want to move to the next slide. So this takes that first page of usage, has it by town, and then we're taking a percentage of the total usage to get the portion of the budget that is allocated to each town. So the total town share out of the 401,000 is about 86, almost 87,000. So as you can see, they were in about the 20s for usage of the senior center. That total is 22% of that operating budget and personnel costs. On the next slide, this shows, as Cindy indicated, some of the towns contribute already an amount. What we're showing here is so that fee amount that we calculated out, what their 2025 contributions were, and then what that difference is going to look like for each town. So where some are small, there's some larger increases for specifically Dunkirk and Pleasant Springs. With every municipality facing budget constraints, Cindy and I talked about doing some sort of phase-in approach, maybe over 3 years, giving it optional. Maybe Town of Dunn is like, no, we just will contribute our fair share, get where we're at. Some of the other towns might be like, okay, we need to incrementally increase this. With that, we can look at doing it, like if we did a 3-year, do new calculations every year, or make it simpler, come up with, all right, well, Town of Dunkirk is going to be at 30,000 even, and then set a increase, that difference of almost 19,500, almost 20,000, take that and say, okay, over the next 3 years, we're going to increase it X amount. And then when we get past that 3rd year, then start a new calculation. Because otherwise it's, here's the calculation for this year, here's a third of that, then a new calculation next year, well, we have increased costs, now this portion here. So we can do it either way to make it simpler. It might be nice to set an amount, get to that over 3 years, and then recalculate year after year after that.
Brett?
I mean, I think giving them, especially for the larger gap or delta that's in between those, giving them a 3-year, I think is fair to look at for them. And as far as like the percentage usage, I mean, that's a hard number. That's not anything that we're in a debate or making it up. This is a real thing. And I think because you've got such longitudinal data in there that you can kind of peg like, you know, it's been this percentage or hereabouts for a long time. So I think if we set them up on like a rolling 3-year average or something like that, once we get to that catch-up point after the phase-in, and then just peg it to a rolling average, and then it seems fair.
If I may, the discussion though needs to be had if they say no.
Yeah, I mean,
I mean, it needs to be had only because there's no way that we have enough staff to monitor who's using the senior center. So there's no way for us to go, I'm sorry, your township has not, so you're not able to participate. I can't. I mean, there's no way to do that. And I obviously would not want to put my staff in that situation either. But just logistically, there's no way to do that. Or I could say, I can't think of a just logistical way to do that.
So these are, when you look at these are, so we have an event and we're just tracking where the people are coming from.
Correct.
These are not, okay. That's what I thought. I wanted to be
Correct.
clear on that. So.
Yep. Within our, and you receive our end of the year report, you'll get it in a little bit, maybe a couple weeks for 2025. Within that, it's broken down through category of exercise and, entertainment and nutrition and all of those pieces. It's broken down into that. This is just we collapse them into.
Yeah, I only ask that because I agree with you. I don't know how, if one of the townships that's not
Correct.
paying just says no,
Yeah.
I have no idea how you would do that.
And I don't want to be a negative Nelly, but you're going to get it. I mean, it just is. I mean,
Yeah, I mean, I think, there's, and it sounds like you've probably already tried this, but the way that it's presented is certainly a part of that puzzle, because on the flip side, it's also not fair for the city of Stoughton to pay for their residents.
historically, absolutely.
And so, I mean, we certainly don't want to be hostile and have a key fob and only the people in the city of Stoughton can get in the key fob. I mean, that seems extreme, but I think the reality is every city is stretched. And so, you've got 3 years to try to figure out how this is a priority or not. So, I mean, I'm saying things that I'm sure you've already thought of, but I think a lot of it's just going to be about the presentation and get there. And maybe that's a conversation we have after you have this, kind of send it out there and just see what their reaction is, and if, go from there. But that's the first thing I thought of too, is like it would be very complicated, very unpopular, unfair sad for the people who use the services. So we just don't, want to put anybody in that position, including you or the people using the service. So it really behooves them to really try to make this a
Correct.
priority. So
Yeah.
hopefully,
Yeah.
but
I mean, there are some big jumps for a couple of them. And two that are going to real struggle. They're going to really struggle with those numbers. But none of this should be a surprise. I have visited every one of those towns talking about usage and talking about, contributions. And, I mean, unless someone's brand new to their board this year that I didn't talk to last year, this shouldn't be a surprise to anybody on their board. Next steps?
Yeah, that's what's going to be my question is, what's the potential action just to,
are you just looking for kind of an offer, the support that we agree? Because I don't know if you need it in a motion or just a sort of a hands of support, but I think, this all I think it's all very organized and makes sense. And I guess my only next question is going to be, is it going to be a face-to-face as opposed to a letter conversation?
I think
then?
I would
Again,
rather do
yeah.
face-to-face myself, and that's fine with me.
Yeah, so I support everything that I see in front of me.
the data seems solid.
I would suggest that we would just invite all 5 to a meeting, and we talk with them. Is that all right with you?
Okay. That,
They would come back here after the meeting.
Sure. Fine by me.
Yeah, I think that's the most reasonable way. We've had a similar conversation with they initiated a conversation regarding streets, which some of you probably saw their letters, but this is, this is a significant amount of money.
But I think it's fair.
Oh, yeah, they're definitely getting the service, there's no question. If they want to question that, we can talk about that too, but I don't know where else it would go.
some kind of a be like done promotion.
Yeah, I think they've gotten that a couple times in the history, so.
All right, well, thank you.
Sure.
A Future agenda items. We've got adopted budget next, is that the next meeting? March 10th? Good Lord. Where'd February go? A resolution to amend the adopted budget. March 24th, we're going to talk about the cash handling policy, purchasing, card holder and limits. Oh, I remember those from a couple of meetings ago. And then some other items that are to be determined. Do we have anything else that we need to add to the agenda? All right, I would entertain a motion. All right, we have a motion by Schumacher. Second by Dew. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. And any opposed? We're adjourned.